So a big moment happened in the Alex Murdaugh murder trial where Maggie Murdaugh's sister testified about the failed suicide attempt of Alex Murdaugh. And she testified a little bit into it, and objections were made. The judge made a ruling on that. So let's take a look at what the testimony was, what the jury's already heard. We'll hear the judge's order, and then we're going to respond.
Ms. Proctor, when we left on the break, I was asking you what happened in September that caused you to change your assessment. Can you describe that to the jury, please?
On September 4th, we were headed to a football game, and my husband, Bart, received a phone call from a friend saying he was so sorry to hear about what had happened to my brother-in-law. And we had no idea what he was talking about. And he said, well, we've heard, he told us he had been shot. So we pulled over on the side of the road. We were all in hysterics. We called Buster, and Buster said yes, that his dad had been shot, that he was being airlifted to the hospital, that they thought hoped he was going to be okay. So we wanted more information, so we called Jim Griffin, and he told us that Alec had been shot in the head and that he had been fired from his law firm for stealing.
What was your concern when you heard that he had been shot?
Initially, I thought he might be dead. I had just lost 2 of the family members, and I felt like we're being targeted.
Wow. Well, that was some interesting testimony. There's a lot of concerns that are raised with whether or not that's relevant or whether or not it's extremely prejudicial. What are your thoughts about that testimony?
Yeah, I think that's been one of the big questions that's been hovering over this trial is, whether these other events that happened a few months after the murders, specifically Alex's attempt at suicide, which allegedly involved his former client and relative of his, who he allegedly hired to kill him to get some life insurance for his surviving son. I think most of the jurors are aware that this happened because it was all over the news. These jurors know about the basic facts of this case. There's just no way around it. And he admitted that that's what he was doing. He gave a statement to the police saying that that's what he was attempting to do when he was shot. I don't think it's going to be that prejudicial because the jury probably already knows about it, but I do think it's right that the judge not allow everyone to get distracted by this thing that happened 3 months later.
Right. Yeah, and I think what we're going to hear from the judge is a discussion about whether or not this falls under any of the exceptions that were discussed earlier with the financial crimes leading up to the murders. All of these happened prior to the murders, and the state issued it not for the purpose of character evidence or showing propensity. They put it in to basically show that he had a motive. From the state's position, it's going to be really hard to make the argument that what happened 3 months later is going to somehow further their argument for motive. So let's see what the judge has to say.
Well, the financial evidence was allowed on the issue of motive. This evidence, I find, goes beyond motive or is not evidence of motive, but more toward common scheme or plan. It does not survive the logical relevancy test, and it goes more toward showing the propensity to commit violent acts, which would cause it not to survive the 403 analysis. I believe that to allow this evidence is a bridge too far, going down this path of allowing essentially any and all evidence in. We have guardrails. The court is to place guardrails to keep things within a reasonable realm. And I believe this, as I stated, will be a bridge too far. It does not meet the logical relevancy test. I agree with the defense that it would be admissible perhaps if the trial was a trial on the financial theft issues, but not on the murder. So I grant the motion to exclude this evidence at this time. Of course, as we have seen, things change.
So what do you think?
Well, so basically the judge is saying that we're not going to hear any more evidence about this alleged suicide attempt that happened about 3 months later, and that it's going to be confusing for the jury and too prejudicial. But he did leave the door open to say, hey, this could come back up. And I think he's indicating that, if a witness opens the door, this came up during the trial because the defense was cross-examining a witness who mentioned it. And so I think he's warning the defense to stay away from bringing it up again because he might end up letting it all in. So, well,
yeah, I mean, if they start talking about Cousin Eddie, then that could very well possibly open the door.
I think that the state is really wanting this in, not just because it fits this theory that they have that he commits some egregious act of violence to distract from his, financial crimes that are caving in on him. That might be, if the jury buys that, so be it. But I think it's more about showing that you can't put any faith at all into what Alex says. I mean, it seems like they're finding ways to get this stuff in that normally wouldn't be available because they're scoring points every single time the jury hears that he says one thing and then it turns out to be the complete opposite. And the more that they can hammer home that Alex's statements just don't mean anything, the closer they're going to come to getting a conviction. But they still have a lot of hurdles to overcome.
I think the judge made the right decision in excluding that because I think it is incredibly prejudicial. I thought the defense did a really good job in making their argument that it's hard to make the logical argument that this is part of a scheme when he was trying to kill himself. That's a heck of a way to try to get a distraction away from your prosecution or the investigation into the murder. That just seems a little far-fetched.
Yeah, I think Harpootlian made a great point when he said it's not a common scheme. If you believe their theory it's a common scheme, then the scheme would have been to go kill his other son. Which sounds ridiculous, but if you believe he killed Maggie and Paul for the same reason, then it's not as ridiculous sounding as he makes it sound.
All right. Well, if you like this video, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so you can get future videos.